Welcome to another evening of intrigue and intellect in the world of Nero Wolfe. Settle into your favorite armchair, perhaps with a glass of fine beer or a pot of orchids nearby, as we transport you back to the golden age of detective fiction. Tonight's tale, Sinister Stranger at Lily Rowans Gala, unfolds in the bustling heart of 1940s New York, where shadows lurk amid the glitter of high society. Narrated in the first person by the ever-astute Archie Goodwin, this mystery promises puzzles to ponder, suspects to scrutinize, and a resolution that satisfies the soul. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our community of sleuths, and tell me in the comments, what era or location would you like our next mystery set in? Now let's begin. Chapter 1. The invitation arrives. It was one of those crisp autumn afternoons in 1945, the kind where the leaves on West 35th Street turned a defiant gold against the graying skyline, and the air carried the faint tang of roasted chestnuts from the vendor on the corner. I, Archie Goodwin, was perched at my desk in the office of Nero Wolfe's brownstone, hammering away at the keys of my Remington typewriter. The boss had just dictated a blistering letter to some hapless botanist society, railing against the barbaric practice of cross-pollinating certain rare orchids without proper reverence. "It's an affront to nature's artistry, Archie," he'd bellowed from his throne-like chair, his massive frame, seventh of a ton, as he liked to remind me, barely shifting as he gestured with a pudgy finger. Type it verbatim and add a postscript, "Phooey," to their hybrid abominations. Wolfe was in his element that day, having spent the morning in the plant rooms upstairs, tending to his 10,000 orchids with the tenderness most men reserve for their firstborn. Theodore Horseman, our resident horticulturist, had been up there with him, murmuring about humidity levels and fungal threats like they were discussing state secrets. Me? I was content down here, the office a cozy fortress of oak panels, leather-bound books, and the perpetual aroma of Fritz Brenner's culinary wizardry drifting from the kitchen. Fritz, our Swiss chef extraordinaire, was prepping dinner, something involving pheasant and a sauce that could make a statue weep with joy. The phone jangled then, shattering the rhythm of my typing like a poorly timed cymbal crash in a jazz set. I snatched it up on the second ring. Nero Wolfe's office, Archie Goodwin speaking. The voice on the other end was like velvet wrapped around a stiletto, smooth, seductive, and capable of drawing blood if you weren't careful. "Archie, darling, is that you, or have I reached the wrong recluse's lair?" I grinned, leaning back in my chair until it creaked in protest. "Lily Rowan, as I live and breathe, to what do I owe this auditory delight? Planning to drag the boss to another one of your soirees?" Lily laughed, a sound like champagne bubbles popping in a crystal. "Flute, you know me too well, Escamillo." That was her pet name for me, lifted from some opera about bullfighters. "Fitting," she said, "for my penchant for charging into trouble. But yes, precisely. Tell that sedentary genius of yours to dust off his yellow silk pajamas and prepare for an evening of civilized debauchery. I'm hosting a gala at my penthouse tomorrow night. Black tie mandatory, champagne flowing like the Hudson after a rainstorm, and enough high society intrigue to tempt even Nero Wolfe out of his hermitage." I glanced over at Wolfe, who was pretending to be engrossed in a volume of the Gallic War by Caesar, but I knew better. His ears had perked up like a bloodhound catching a scent. "Lily, you know the rules. Wolfe doesn't leave the brownstone for anything short of a national emergency or a case that pays enough to fund his beer habit for a decade." "Pish-posh, Archie. This isn't just any gala. It's themed around forgotten fortunes and hidden histories, perfect for your boss's encyclopedic mind. I've invited the cream of New York's elite, bankers with vaults fuller than Fort Knox, artists whose canvases could buy small countries, politicians with smiles as oily as their promises, and maybe even a few shady characters to keep things spicy. Come on, darling, persuade him. For me?" I covered the mouthpiece and relayed the invitation to Wolfe, embellishing it with a few flourishes about the potential for gourmet hors d'oeuvres that might rival Fritz's. Wolfe's response was predictable, a deep rumble from his chest, followed by that signature "Fui," but there was a glint in his eye, a fractional twitch of his lips that betrayed curiosity. Lily Rowans Galas were legendary in Manhattan's upper crust, events where deals were sealed over martinis, romances ignited under chandeliers, and occasionally scandals erupted like fireworks over the East River. Wolfe had attended one before, years ago, and it had led to a case involving a poisoned caviar canapé, nostalgia perhaps, or the allure of Lily's charm, but I sensed he was hooked. "All right, Lily," I said, uncovering the phone. "You've got a maybe, but only if you promise a seat wide enough for the boss and a buffet that doesn't skimp on the exotic cheeses." "Done and done, Archie, and bring your dancing shoes. I might need a partner for the foxtrot." She hung up with a kiss blown through the line, leaving me chuckling. Wolfe set down his book with a thud that echoed like a gavel. "Archie, you presume too much. I have no intention of subjecting myself to the cacophony of social frivolity." "Oh, come on, boss, it's Lily. And think of the people watching. Prime material for your anthropological musings on human folly." I knew how to play him, appeal to his intellect, his ego, and subtly to his stomach. Besides, Fritz can hold down the fort here. What's the harm in one night out? He harumphed, folding his arms over his expansive belly, but didn't outright refuse. That was as good as a yes in wolf speak. I busied myself with the rest of the afternoon's tasks, filing reports from our last case, a tidy affair involving a stolen manuscript from a publishing tycoon, while sneaking glances at the clock. The invitation had stirred something in the air, a faint whiff of anticipation that made the ordinary hum of the brownstone feel charged. As evening fell, the city outside our windows transformed. Street lamps flickered on, casting long shadows that danced like suspects evading the third degree. Fritz served dinner in the dining room, pheasant en croûte with a Madeira reduction, accompanied by a salad of endive and walnuts that Wolfe savored with closed eyes. Over coffee, black and strong enough to strip paint, I broached the subject again. "Lily's penthouse is on Park Avenue, boss. Rooftop terrace with views that could make a cynic poetic. You could hold court from a corner chaise, observing the fauna of high society." Wolfe dabbed his lips with a linen napkin. "Your persistence is tiresome, Archie, but perhaps Miss Rowan's gatherings do attract individuals of note. There might be discourse worthy of engagement." Victory! I hid my smirk behind a sip of coffee. The rest of the evening passed in companionable silence. Wolfe retreating to his study with a fresh beer, me flipping through the evening edition of the Gazette, noting headlines about post-war rationing easing and a spike in black market dealings. Little did I know those shadows outside foreshadowed the sinister turn our night would take. The next morning dawned with a drizzle that polished the sidewalks to a treacherous sheen. I handled the usual routines. Breakfast of eggs sardu for Wolfe, a quick workout in the basement gym for me, and a perusal of the mail. Among the bills and circulars was a cream-colored envelope, hand-delivered, addressed to Nero Wolfe in elegant script. I slid it open and read aloud, "Mr. Wolfe, your presence at my gala will elevate the evening immeasurably." Enclosed, a preview of the menu curated by my personal chef, anticipating your genius, Lily. Attached was a card listing delicacies, foie gras terrine, oysters Rockefeller, beef Wellington bites, enough to make Wolfe's eyes gleam. "See, boss, it's fate." He grunted assent, and by afternoon, preparations were underway. Wolfe selected his finest suit, a custom-tailored number in charcoal wool that accommodated his girth with dignified grace, and I polished my shoes to a mirror finish. As the sun dipped low, painting the Hudson in hues of amber and indigo, we stepped out into the bustling street. A taxi idled at the curb, courtesy of Lily's thoughtfulness. The ride uptown was a symphony of New York's vitality, horns blaring, pedestrians dodging puddles, newsboys hawking papers with cries of "Extra, read all about it." Wolfe sat immobile, gazing out at the passing facades of brownstones giving way to skyscrapers. "Archie," he murmured, "society is a masquerade. Beneath the veneer, motives fester like untended wounds." Poetic, boss, but relax. It's a party, not a perp walk. Lily's building loomed on Park Avenue, a deco masterpiece of chrome and glass that screamed old money with new polish. The doorman, a stoic fellow in brass-buttoned uniform, ushered us into a marble lobby scented with fresh lilies. Ironic. given our hostess's name. The elevator whisked us to the penthouse, opening onto a foyer alive with the murmur of arriving guests. Lily herself greeted us, a vision in a crimson gown that hugged her curves like a second skin, her blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon sparkling with diamond pins. "Archie, you dashing devil," she exclaimed, planting a kiss on my cheek that carried the warmth of summer wine. "And Nero, my, you clean up splendidly. Come, I've reserved a throne for you by the buffet." The penthouse was a marvel, expansive rooms flowing into one another, walls adorned with abstract paintings that could have been Rorschach tests for the wealthy. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow, and French doors opened to a rooftop terrace where potted palms swayed in the breeze. Waiters in white jackets glided like specters, trays laden with canapes and flutes of bubbly. Lily introduced us around with flair. "Meet Reginald Harcourt, the oil baron whose wells gush fortunes and occasionally scandals." Harcourt, a burly man with a mustache like a walrus's, shook my hand with a grip that could crush coal into diamonds. "Pleasure, Goodwin. Heard of Wolfe's exploits? Solved that diamond heist last year, eh?" Then there was Vivian Slade, the actress whose face graced Broadway marquees and tabloid fronts alike. Slender as a reed, with eyes like storm clouds, she air-kissed Lily. "Darling, this gala is divine, but who's that brooding fellow over there?" My gaze followed hers to a stranger, tall, gaunt, in a tuxedo that hung awkwardly as if borrowed from a broader man. He lingered near the balcony railing, fedora tipped low over sharp features, nursing a highball with fingers that twitched nervously. His eyes darted across the room, cataloging guests like a bookie eyeing marks. "Lily," I whispered, "who's the shadow in the hat? Looks like he wandered in from a Raymond Chandler novel." She frowned slightly, her poise unbroken. "Victor Lang, he calls himself. Showed up with a note from Reginald. Some business associate, I gather. Odd bird, isn't he? Keeps to himself, but his invitation checked out." Wolfe, already ensconced in an oversized armchair with a plate of delicacies, observed Lang with a subtle glance. "Archie, note his demeanor. A man ill at ease in finery often harbors secrets." The evening unfolded like a well-rehearsed play, laughter pealing over the clink of glasses, couples swaying to a live quartet's rendition of "Moonlight Serenade." I mingled, charming a debutante here, trading barbs with a banker there, all while keeping an eye on Lang. He slipped toward Lily's study at one point, hand dipping into his pocket, fumbling for a cigarette or something more. Dr. Elias Thorne joined the fray, a reclusive inventor with wild hair and spectacles perched on a beak-like nose. "Wolfe, a fellow intellect," he boomed, pumping the boss's hand. "I've a gadget that'll revolutionize communication. Wireless eavesdropping, precise as a surgeon's scalpel." Vivian overheard, smirking. "Eavesdropping, doctor? How quaint. In Hollywood we call that research for roles." Tension simmered beneath the surface. Old rivalries, whispered alliances. As the lights dimmed for Lily's toast, I felt a prickle at my neck. "To friends, fortunes, and the foes we've forgotten," she proclaimed. But in that moment Lang's shadow lengthened, his gaze locking on Vivian with an intensity that chilled. Little did we know, the gala's glitter hid a blade's edge. Chapter 2. Arrival at the Gala. The taxi pulled up to Lily Rowan's building just as the evening sky deepened to a velvet indigo, punctuated by the twinkling lights of Manhattan's skyline like stars fallen to earth. I helped Wolfe out, his bulk emerging with the deliberate grace of a liner docking at port. He adjusted his Homburg hat, grumbling under his breath about the indignity of public conveyance, but his eyes, sharp as ever, were already scanning the entrance. The doorman, a grizzled veteran named O'Malley, pronounced O'Malley, tipped his cap with a deferential "Evenin', Mr. Wolfe, Mr. Goodwin. Miss Rowan's expectin' you upstairs." We stepped into the lobby, a cavern of polished marble and gilded mirrors that reflected the opulence of pre-war excess. The elevator operator, a kid barely out of short pants, whistled softly as he cranked the lever, shooting us upward with a smooth hum. Wolfe clutched the brass rail, his face a mask of stoic endurance. He loathed elevators almost as much as he did exercise. Me? I used the ride to straighten my tie and run a comb through my hair, anticipating the swirl of glamour ahead. The doors parted onto Lily's penthouse foyer, and we were enveloped in a wave of warmth, laughter, and the heady perfume of gardenias mingled with cigar smoke. The place was alive, a symphony of clinking glasses, rustling silk gowns, and the low thrum of a jazz quartet tucked in the corner, their saxophones wailing like sirens in the night. Lily had outdone herself. The main salon stretched out like a ballroom, with Art Deco chandeliers casting a golden haze over clusters of guests. French doors led to the rooftop terrace, where fairy lights strung between potted palms twinkled against the cityscape, the Empire State Building looming in the distance like a sentinel. Lily spotted us immediately, gliding over with the poise of a panther in pearls. Her crimson gown shimmered under the lights, the fabric whispering as she moved, and her smile could have lit up Broadway. "Archie, you made it, and you dragged Nero along. Miracles do happen." She leaned in for a peck on my cheek, her lips leaving a faint imprint of rouge that I didn't mind one bit. Then turning to Wolfe, she curtsied mockingly. "Your Majesty, I've prepared a sanctuary for you. Follow me." Wolfe inclined his head, a rare concession. "Miss Rowan, your hospitality is tolerable." High praise from him. She led us through the throng, introducing us en route to a parade of New York's glitterati. First up was Reginald Harcourt, the oil tycoon whose empire spanned from Texas fields to Wall Street boardrooms. He was a bear of a man, ruddy-cheeked with a mustache that bristled like a hedgehog, clad in a tuxedo straining at the seams. "Wolfe, Goodwin, heard you're the brains behind that counterfeit ring bust last month. Damn fine work. Lost a bundle in fake bonds myself." His handshake was a vice, but his eyes held a flicker of calculation like a poker player sizing up the table. Beside him hovered his wife, Eleanor Harcourt, a faded beauty in emerald satin, her neck dripping with emeralds that matched her gown but not her weary expression. "Charmed," she murmured, her voice laced with the boredom of too many galas. Reginald boomed on about oil prices post-war, but I caught him glancing toward the bar, where a cluster of sharp-suited men nursed whiskeys, their conversations hushed and intense. Lily steered us onward. "And here's Vivian Slade, the toast of the stage." Vivian turned, a vision of silver fox fur and platinum curls, her dress a sheath of midnight blue that accentuated her lithe figure. She was the kind of dame who could stop traffic on Fifth Avenue, eyes like sapphires, lips painted a defiant red, and a laugh that tinkled like breaking crystal. "Archie Goodwin, the detective with the dimples?" "Enchanted." She extended a gloved hand, which I kissed with appropriate flair. "And Mr. Wolfe, I've read about your exploits. Solving murders from an armchair. Genius or laziness?" Wolfe's lips twitched. "Efficiency, Miss Slade. One conserves energy for the intellect." She laughed again, but there was an edge to it, a brittleness that spoke of hidden fractures. I'd seen her name in the columns, scandals involving directors, gambling debts, a messy divorce. Tonight, she seemed on edge, her gaze flitting to the doors as if expecting a ghost. Next came Dr. Elias Thorne, the inventor, shuffling forward with the awkward gait of a man more at home in a lab than a lounge. His tux was rumpled, his spectacles askew on a hawkish nose, and his hair stood in wild tufts like Einstein's unkempt cousin. "Mr. Wolfe, a pleasure. I'm working on a device, revolutionary, you see, a compact listener that could eavesdrop on whispers from across a room. Imagine the applications for, well, detection, perhaps?" His enthusiasm bubbled over, but Wolfe merely nodded, his interest piqued but guarded. Thorne's companion, a mousy assistant named Clara Voss, hovered in his shadow, notepad in hand, her plain black dress a stark contrast to the room's splendor. "Doctor, your tie," she whispered, straightening. They smut with maternal fuss. Thorne waved her off, diving into a monologue about electromagnetic waves that had Wolfe's eyebrows climbing. As Lily ushered Wolfe to his throne, a massive velvet armchair by the buffet, piled with cushions to accommodate his frame, I took stock of the room. The buffet was a feast for the gods, silver platters heaped with caviar on blinnies, lobster thermidor in delicate shells, foie gras terrine sliced thin as paper, and an array of cheeses that could make a Frenchman homesick. Fritz would approve, though he'd sniff at the presentation. Wolfe settled in with a sigh of contentment, forking into a slice of beef Wellington as if it were his last meal. I circulated, playing the social butterfly while keeping my detective's eye sharp. The quartet struck up In the Mood, and couples took to the improvised dance floor. Debutantes in pastel chiffon twirling with bankers in pinstripes, their laughter a counterpoint to the undercurrents I sensed. Over by the terrace doors, a group of politicians huddled, cigars puffing like smokestacks, discussing Truman's latest policies with furrowed brows. One, Senator Harlan Fiske, caught my eye, sleek as an otter with a reputation for slippery deals, but my attention kept drifting to that sinister stranger, Victor Lang. He hadn't moved much from his balcony perch, his fedora still shadowing his gaunt face, his highball glass perpetually half full. Up close, he looked even more out of place, tuxedo ill-fitting, shoes scuffed, hands calloused like a laborer's. Who was he? I sidled over, casual as you please, snagging a champagne flute from a passing tray. "Evening," I said, leaning on the railing beside him. The city sprawled below, a grid of lights pulsing with life. The rumble of traffic faint, the Hudson a dark ribbon snaking through. "Fine view, huh? Name's Archie Goodwin." Lang turned slowly, his eyes narrow slits under the hat brim. "Lang. Victor Lang." His voice was gravelly, accented, Eastern European maybe. "Associate of Mr. Harcourt's, business matters." He didn't offer a hand, just sipped his drink, his gaze sliding away to scan the crowd. "Business at a gala? Must be urgent." I probed lightly, but he clammed up, muttering something about debts and deliveries. Odd, Harcourt hadn't mentioned him, and Lang's demeanor screamed trouble. Fidgety fingers, a bulge in his pocket that could be a flask or something more lethal. Lily appeared at my elbow, looping her arm through mine. "Archie, dance with me. Leave Mr. Lang to his brooding." She pulled me onto the floor, her steps light and teasing. As we foxtrotted, she whispered, "He's peculiar, isn't he? Showed up unannounced, but Reginald vouched for him via note. Said he's handling some discreet transaction." Discreet, eh? In my line, that often means dirty. The music swirled around us, her perfume, a mix of jasmine and mischief, clouding my senses. Lily was a force, independent, wealthy from her family's publishing empire, and sharper than most men I knew. Our banter was a game, but beneath it lay genuine spark. The dance ended, applause rippling, and I escorted her back to Wolfe, who was demolishing a plate of oysters with methodical precision. "Archie, report," he murmured between bites. "Standard high society mix, boss. Harcourt's blustery, Vivian's brittle, Thorne's eccentric, and that Lang fellow, fishy as a week-old mackerel." Wolfe nodded, his eyes half-lidded. "Observe alliances, motives lurk in glances, ever the oracle." The evening wore on, the quartet shifting to slower tunes as conversations deepened. I overheard snippets, Vivian arguing softly with Harcourt near the bar. "You promised to cover that loan, Reggie." Her voice tight with desperation. Harcourt brushed her off, his face reddening. Thorne, meanwhile, cornered the investor, gesticulating wildly about his gadget. "It could change espionage forever." Hear a pin drop from a block away. Clara Voss, the assistant, hovered nearby, her eyes darting protectively. She caught me watching and flushed, busying herself with a canapé. As the clock neared 10, Lily dimmed the lights for her toast, the room falling into a hush. Guests gathered, glasses raised. "To forgotten fortunes and hidden histories," she intoned, her voice carrying like a stage actress's. "May our secrets stay buried and our joys unearthed." Cheers erupted, but in the flicker of candlelight I saw Lang slip toward Lily's study, a side room off the salon, filled with books and artifacts. His hand dipped into his pocket again. Curious, I excused myself from Wolfe and followed discreetly, weaving through the crowd. The study door was ajar, lamplight spilling out. Peering in, I saw Lang rifling a drawer, searching frantically, papers fluttering. A blueprint? A letter? His back was to me, muttering curses in a foreign tongue. Chapter 3. The first whisper of trouble. The scream still echoed in my ears like a banshee's wail as I pushed through the panicked crowd on the terrace. Vivian Slade's body lay there under the fairy lights, her midnight blue gown twisted around her like a shroud, the jeweled dagger glinting cruelly in the moonlight. Blood pooled on the flagstones. dark and viscous, seeping toward a potted palm as if seeking cover. Lily knelt beside her, hands trembling as she checked for a pulse, her crimson dress now stained with tragedy. "She's gone," Lily whispered, her voice cracking like fine china. Guests milled about in shock, women clutching pearls, men loosening collars, while the quartet's music sputtered to a halt, the saxophone letting out a final, mournful honk. I knelt too, careful not to disturb the scene. Vivian's eyes were wide open, fixed on the starry sky above Manhattan, as if accusing the heavens of foul play. The dagger was no ordinary weapon, an antique piece, ornate with filigree and gemstones, straight from Lily's collection of curiosities displayed in the salon. I'd admired it earlier that evening, joking with Lily about its history as a relic from some European duke's armory. Now it was Exhibit A in a murder. "Wolfe," I called over my shoulder, "we've got a stiff on our hands." The boss had lumbered to the terrace doors, his massive frame filling the frame like a plug in a bottle. He surveyed the chaos with those piercing eyes, his lips pursed in distaste. "Archie, phone the authorities and secure the exits. No one leaves until Inspector Kramer arrives." I nodded, barking orders to the doorman O'Malley and a couple of burly waiters to guard the doors and elevator. The penthouse, moments ago a haven of high society revelry, now felt like a gilded cage. Guests whispered in clusters, "Who could have done this? Was it robbery?" Poor Vivian. She had enemies, you know. Lily stood, wiping her hands on a napkin, her face pale but composed. "Archie, that dagger, it was in the display case not an hour ago. Someone must have taken it during the mingle." Her eyes met mine, a mix of fear and fire. I admired her grit. Lily Rowan wasn't one to crumple under pressure. Reginald Harcourt lumbered over, his ruddy face now ashen, mustache quivering. "Good God, man. Vivian, stabbed. I was just talking to her." He mopped his brow with a monogrammed handkerchief, glancing nervously at his wife Eleanor, who hovered nearby, her emeralds catching the light like accusatory eyes. Dr. Elias Thorne pushed through, spectacles fogged, his wild hair even more disheveled. "Let me through. I'm a doctor of sorts." He bent over the body, feeling for signs of life, but shook his head. Dead. The blade pierced the heart, clean, professional almost. His assistant Clara Voss lingered behind him, notepad clutched like a shield, her mousy features twisted in horror. And Victor Lang? The sinister stranger had pulled a vanishing act worthy of Whodunit. I'd seen him heading to the study, but now he was nowhere in sight. A quick scan of the terrace and salon turned up nothing, not even his fedora. Had he slipped out during the toast, or was he hiding in the shadows watching? I made the call from Lily's private line in the study, the same room where I'd spotted Lang rummaging. "Homicide, please." "Yeah, this is Archie Goodwin at Lily Rowan's penthouse on Park Avenue. We've got a murder, woman stabbed at a gala. Send Inspector Kramer. He'll want in on this." The operator's voice was crisp, promising arrival in minutes. Hanging up, I rifled the drawers quickly. Papers scattered, but nothing obvious missing. A faint scent lingered like cheap cologne mixed with tobacco. Lang's? Back on the terrace, Wolfe had commandeered a chaise lounge, directing the scene like a general. "Archie, gather statements. Start with the principals." His voice was calm, but I knew that brain of his was already whirring, piecing puzzles from the air. I started with Harcourt. "Where were you when the lights dimmed for the toast, Reggie?" He blustered. "At the bar, mixing a gin ricky." "Ask the bartender." Fellow named Gino. Gino, a wiry Italian with a pencil mustache, confirmed it from across the room. "See, Mr. Harcourt was here, complained about the lime being too tart." Eleanor chimed in unbidden. "I was with him. We heard the scream together." Her voice faltered, eyes darting to Vivian's body. Jealousy. Vivian's scandals often involved married men. Thorne next. "I was chatting with Senator Fisk about my invention. The listening device could pick up a whisper from 50 feet. He adjusted his spectacles, hands steady despite the shock." Clara nodded vigorously. "Yes, Doctor was with the senator the whole time. But Fisk, when I cornered him, hedged." Thorne? "Yes, we talked gadgets, but I stepped away for a smoke just before the toast." A crack in the alibi? Vivian herself, well, she wasn't talking, but her clutch lay nearby, spilled open. Lipstick, compact, a torn scrap of paper with scrawled words. "Thorne's folly, expose it." I pocketed it discreetly for Wolfe. Lily pulled me aside. Archie, Vivian and I were old friends from boarding school days, but lately she'd been troubled. Debts, you know, gambling at those underground clubs in Harlem. Her eyes welled, but she blinked it away. And she mentioned something about a stranger watching her earlier. Lang again. The whisper of trouble was growing to a roar. Sirens wailed below, crescendoing as Inspector Kramer burst from the elevator, his squad in tow. Kramer was a bull in a china shop, stocky, red-faced, perpetual cigar clamped between teeth, hat askew. "Wolfe, Goodwin, what the hell? A society bash turns into a slaughterhouse?" He chewed his cigar furiously, glaring at the body. "All right, spill it." I gave him the rundown. Gala, toast, scream, dagger from the collection. Victims Vivian Slade, actress. Suspects? Everyone here, but keep an eye on a missing guest. Victor Lang, shady type. Kramer's boys cordoned the terrace, photographers flashing bulbs like lightning. He grilled Lily first. "Miss Rowan, your party, your dagger. Enemies?" Lily straightened, regal despite the mess. Inspector, Vivian had her share. Ex-lovers, rivals. But here, it's unthinkable. Wolfe interjected from his chaise. "Inspector, the wound angle suggests a downward thrust, killer taller than the victim. And left-handed, perhaps." Kramer snorted. "Playing doctor now, Wolfe? Leave it to the coroner." But Wolfe's observation stuck. Vivian was 5'6". The dagger entered high on her back. Lang was tall, Thorne too. Harcourt? Burly but right-handed, I recalled from his handshake. As Kramer herded guests for statements, I slipped back to the study. The drawer Lang had rifled, Lily's personal papers, including guest lists and some blueprints. Wait, Thorne's invention? Lily had mentioned hosting inventors, perhaps a prototype sketch. A waiter approached. "Mr. Goodwin, I saw that Lang fellow arguing with Miss Slade earlier by the buffet. Something about debts unpaid, and you'll regret crossing him." Motive? Vivian's gambling woes tied to Lang? Wolfe summoned me. Archie, the cologne on the dagger, faint but distinctive, vetiver and sandalwood, cheap variety. His nose was legendary. I'd trust it over a bloodhound's. Kramer rapped initial rounds, announcing, "No one leaves town. We'll reconvene tomorrow." But as guests filed out under escort, Thorne lingered, whispering to Clara, "Destroy the notes. Can't let this out. Overheard by yours truly." Suspicious? Lily collapsed into a chair beside Wolfe. "Nero, Archie, what now?" Wolfe patted her hand awkwardly, a rare gesture. "Now, Miss Rowan, we investigate." Archie, to the brownstone. Beer and reflection await. The ride home was silent, city lights blurring past. Back on West 35th, Fritz had coffee brewing. Wolfe ensconced in his chair. Archie, clues. The scrap, the argument, the rifled drawer. Patterns emerge. But trouble whispered on, Lang loose in the night. Chapter 4. Suspects emerge. The penthouse, once a glittering eyrie of high society merriment, had transformed into a grim tableau of investigation by the time Inspector Kramer and his boys wrapped up their initial sweep. It was pushing midnight, the fairy lights on the terrace now casting eerie shadows over Vivian Slade's covered body, while flashbulbs popped like distant gunfire. Kramer, his cigar reduced to a soggy stub, paced like a caged tiger, barking orders at his sergeants. "Bag that dagger. Careful with the prints. And you, Pearlie, round up those waiters for statements." Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins, Kramer's right-hand bulldog with a face like weathered granite, nodded grimly and set to work. I stood by Wolfe, who had reclaimed his armchair in the salon, nursing a glass of brandy Lily had pressed upon him. His expression was inscrutable, but I knew that mind of his was cataloguing every detail, the angle of the wound, the missing Lang, the scrap of paper I'd slipped him from Vivian's clutch. "Archie," he murmured, "suspects are like orchids. Some bloom openly, others hide thorns. Prune carefully." Kramer swung toward us, his red face glowing under the chandeliers. "All right, Wolfe, you fat genius. What's your take? This dame gets shivved at a swanky shindig, and you're sittin' pretty like it's a matinee." He chewed his cigar ferociously, eyes narrowing. "Spill or I'll haul you downtown for obstruction." Wolfe sighed, a seismic rumble. "Inspector, your histrionics are tiresome. The facts. Miss Slade was stabbed with Miss Rowan's antique dagger, purloined from its case during the festivities. The killer struck during the dimmed lights of the toast, opportunistic yet premeditated. Motive? Unclear, but the note suggests blackmail or exposure. He handed Kramer the scrap. Thorne's folly. Expose it. Kramer's bushy eyebrows shot up. Thorne? That crackpot inventor? All right, let's grill 'em all. Goodwin, you're with me. No funny business. We started the interrogations in Lily's study, a cozy nook lined with leather-bound tomes and a mahogany desk that screamed old money. First up, Reginald Harcourt, the oil tycoon who lumbered in like a storm cloud, mopping his brow. This is outrageous. I barely knew the woman, invested in one of her flops on Broadway, that's all. His mustache bristled as he sat, chair creaking under his bulk. I leaned against the wall, notebook in hand. Barely knew her. I overheard you two at the bar. Something about a loan sounded heated. Harcourt flushed deeper than his claret tie. Nonsense. She owed me a pittance. 10 grand from a bad bet at the track. I told her to pay up but stab her. Preposterous. I was at the bar, as I said. Kramer pressed. Alibi checks out with the bartender, but motives don't lie. You argue, she ends up dead. Coincidence? Harcourt blustered. Ask my wife. She was with me. But Eleanor, waiting outside, had seemed evasive earlier. Jealousy over Vivian's rumored affair with Reginald, a classic triangle. Next, Dr. Elias Thorne, who entered fidgeting with his spectacles, his wild hair resembling a fright wig. Gentlemen, this is a tragedy, but I assure you I had no quarrel with Miss Slade. His voice was high-pitched, nervous, like a violin string about to snap. Clara Voss, his assistant, trailed him, but was waved out by Kramer. Wolfe, observing from a corner he'd commandeered, interjected, Doctor, your folly. What invention did Miss Slade threaten to expose? Thorne paled, adjusting his rumpled tux. Invention? Oh, the listening device. Revolutionary. Miniature microphone for discreet surveillance. Vivian mocked it at dinner once, called it Thorne's tin ear. But expose? Absurd. I jumped in. That note was in her clutch. And your alibi. Senator Fisk said you stepped away just before the toast. Thorne stammered. I needed the restroom. Clara can vouch. But Clara, when called in, hesitated. Doctor was with me most of the evening. But yes, he excused himself briefly. Suspicious. Thorne was left-handed. I'd noted it when he signed his statement. Matched Wolfe's wound analysis. And his cologne? That faint vetiver whiff Wolfe mentioned. Thorne reeked of it faintly, masked by lab chemicals. Lily Rowan was next. Though Kramer handled her gently, her family's pull in the city was no secret. She sat poised, though her eyes were red-rimmed. Inspector, Vivian was like a sister. We feuded over silly things, men mostly. But murder? I'd never. Her voice trembled on never, tugging at my gut. Lily was tough, but this hit close. What about the dagger? I asked. From your collection? Easy access for you. She met my gaze steadily. Or for anyone, Archie. The case wasn't locked, and I was giving the toast. Center stage, lights on me. Solid alibi, but motives? Vivian had borrowed money from Lily too, per gossip. Old friends or rivals? Kramer dismissed her, then turned to the peripherals. Senator Fisk, who admitted overhearing Vivian slag Thorne's gadget, but claimed ignorance. Politics is my game, not gadgets or grudges. His sleek demeanor screamed slippery. Perhaps Vivian knew dirt on his deals? The waiters and staff came in waves. Gino the bartender confirming Harcourt's presence. A maid swearing she saw Lang near the display case. Tall fella, hat low, fiddlin' with the glass, she said in a thick Brooklyn accent, but no one saw the stab. Victor Lang remained the ghost in the machine, absent, elusive. Kramer issued an APB. Tall, gaunt, foreign accent. Find him. I volunteered to hit the streets come morning, but Wolfe vetoed. Archie, rest. Dawn brings clarity. Back at the brownstone by 2 a.m., Fritz had left sandwiches and beer. Wolfe demolished his share in the office while I paced. Boss, Harcourt's motive is money. Thorne's is exposure. Lily's nah. Lang's the wild card. Wolfe nodded, eyes half closed. Red herrings abound, Archie. The argument overheard. Debts unpaid. Vivian's gambling tied to a syndicate. I recalled Lily's whisper. Harlem clubs. Perhaps Lang was an enforcer. Morning broke gray and drizzly, the city awakening with newsboys hawking headlines. Actress slain at society gala. I scanned the Gazette over coffee, noting Vivian's obit, starlet with a string of scandals, debts mounting, a lead she'd invested in Thorne's folly, per a sidebar. Wolfe, post-Orchid session, dispatched me. Visit Thorne's lab, probe the invention. Greenwich Village, Thorne's lair, a cluttered basement off Washington Square, reeking of solder and ozone. Thorne greeted warily. Mr. Goodwin? More questions? I played nice. Just details, Doc. This listener, how's it work? He demonstrated, a tiny box with wires, amplifying whispers from across the room. For espionage, post-war boom. But Vivian's note, his folly, she invested, then pulled out, claimed it was flawed. But it's not, Clara hovered, eyes sharp. Miss Slade was rude, but Doctor wouldn't harm a fly. Yet her loyalty seemed fierce, protective, almost jealous. A clue. Thorne's desk held a glove, leather matching one found near the body. No, but similar. Planted later. Back to report, but en route, a tail. Shadowy figure in a fedora. Lang? I ducked into an alley, confronted. Show yourself. But he bolted, leaving a matchbook from a Harlem speakeasy. The Blue Note. Wolfe perked at that. Archie, infiltrate tonight. Syndicates and debts. The club pulsed with jazz, smoke thick as fog. A barman, after a 20 spot, spilled. Vivian? Owed big to the boss. 20 grand. Lang? Yeah, collector for Harcourt's shady side. Oil man's got fingers in rackets. Harcourt funding loans. Motive deepens. Lily phoned. Archie, Kramer's hounding me. And Thorne called. Nervous. Wants to meet. Suspects emerging. Webs tangling. Chapter 5. Clues in the Shadows. Dawn crept over West 35th Street like a reluctant witness, the rain from the night before leaving the sidewalks slick and the air heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and brewing coffee. I, Archie Goodwin, had snatched a few hours of shut-eye in my room upstairs, but sleep was fitful. Visions of Vivian Slade's lifeless eyes and that jeweled dagger dancing in my dreams like a macabre tango. By 7 a.m., I was down in the kitchen, where Fritz Brenner, our culinary maestro, was whipping up breakfast with his usual Swiss precision, eggs poached to perfection, bacon crisp as autumn leaves, and toast slathered in butter that could make a monk renounce his vows. Wolfe wouldn't descend from his plant rooms until 9, after his ritual communion with the orchids. So I used the time to pore over my notes from the gala, the scrap of paper from Vivian's clutch, Thorne's folly, expose it, stared back at me like a taunt. What folly? Dr. Elias Thorne's listening device? Sounded like spy stuff straight out of a pulp magazine, but in post-war New York, with the Cold War brewing, espionage gadgets weren't far-fetched. And then there was Victor Lang, the sinister stranger, still at large after his vanishing act. Kramer's APB hadn't turned up squat yet, but I had that matchbook from the Harlem speakeasy, the Blue Note, burning a hole in my pocket. The phone jangled as I sipped my second cup of Joe. Inspector Kramer, growling like a bear with a thorn in its paw. Goodwin, you and that sedentary sleuth got anything? Coroner's prelim, death instantaneous, blade to the heart, prints on the dagger, smudged, gloves probably, and that Lang character's a ghost? No record at the address on his invite. Working on it, Inspector. Wolfe's cogitating. I hung up, smirking. Kramer hated relying on us, but he always came sniffing around when the trail went cold. Wolfe appeared at 9 sharp, immaculate in his yellow silk pajamas, settling into his custom chair behind the desk with a sigh that rustled the papers. Theodore had reported the orchids thriving despite the humidity dip from the rain. Small mercies. Fritz served breakfast on a tray, more eggs, ham, and a stack of buckwheat cakes drowned in maple syrup. Wolfe attacked it methodically, while I briefed him on Kramer's call and my speakeasy intel. Archie, he rumbled between bites. Motives multiply like orchids in fertile soil. Pursue the shadows. Visit Thorne's laboratory. Probe this folly. Then Harcourt's offices, debts and syndicates, and Lang. Trace that matchbook. Patterns will emerge. Orders issued, I grabbed my hat and coat, stepping out out into the drizzle. The city was alive, umbrellas blooming like black flowers on the sidewalks, taxis splashing through puddles. First stop, Dr. Thorne's lab in Greenwich Village, a bohemian enclave of artists, poets, and oddballs where the air smelled of espresso and unwashed ambition. His address was a dingy brownstone basement off Bleecker Street, marked by a brass plaque reading E. Thorne Innovations Lenad. I knocked and Clara Voss answered, her mousy features pinched with suspicion. Mr. Goodwin? The doctor is busy. Experiments. She clutched her notepad like a talisman, her plain dress rumpled from what looked like a sleepless night. Busy or hiding, Miss Voss? This is murder business. Inspector Kramer sends his regards. That loosened her up. She ushered me down creaky stairs into a cavern of chaos. The lab was a mad scientist's dream. Workbenches cluttered with wires, vacuum tubes, soldering irons, and half-assembled gadgets that hummed and sparked like fireflies in a jar. The air buzzed with electricity, mingled with that faint vetiver cologne Wolfe had noted, Thorne's signature scent. Thorne himself emerged from a back room, spectacles askew, hair wilder than ever. Goodwin, come to accuse me again? I told you, alibi solid. He wiped his hands on a rag, eyes darting to a locked safe in the corner. I played it casual, circling the room. Not accusing, Doc, just clarifying. That note in Vivian's clutch. Thorne's folly. What's the folly? This listener of yours? I nodded to the prototype on the bench, a compact box with dials and an antenna looking like a radio's evil twin. Thorne hesitated, then deflated. All right, it's no secret now. The device is a revolutionary eavesdropper. Miniature, battery-powered, can pick up conversations from up to 100 feet through walls. Perfect for intelligence work. He demonstrated, tuning it to catch a neighbor's radio upstairs. Glenn Miller's In the Mood crackled faintly. Impressive, but why folly? Vivian invest and get burned? Thorne nodded reluctantly. She put in $5,000, thought it'd make her rich in Hollywood, spying on directors or some nonsense. But she pulled out last week, claimed it was flawed, overheating issues, demanded her money back. We argued, sure, but kill her? Absurd. Clara interjected. Vivian was hysterical, threatened to go public, say it was a scam, but it's not. Her loyalty burned bright, maybe too bright. Was she covering for Thorne or herself? I pocketed a stray wire snippet for Wolfe. Evidence? One more thing. Your glove from the gala, similar to one near the body. Thorne blanched. I lost one that night. Must have dropped it mingling. Convenient. I left with more questions, the rain picking up as I hailed a cab. Next, Reginald Harcourt's offices in Midtown, a gleaming tower on Fifth Avenue that screamed oil money, marble lobby, elevators smoother than silk. His secretary, a pert redhead named Mabel Kane, greeted me with a wary smile. Mr. Harcourt's in a meeting. Can I help? Archie Goodwin for Nero Wolfe. About Vivian Slade. Mabel's eyes widened, then teared up. Poor Vivian, we were close. Close? I probed. How close? She confessed, glancing at the door. An affair, brief, passionate. Reginald knew, but it ended months ago. He was jealous, sure, but not murderous. Red herring? Mabel's alibi, typing reports in the office that night. No, wait, the murder was at the gala. I wasn't invited, she said, but perhaps she slipped in, led. Nowhere fast, but noted jealousy as motive for Harcourt or Mabel. Harcourt burst out then, bellowing, Goodwin, snooping? I told Kramer everything. He was red-faced, tie askew. Vivian's loan? Peanuts, $10,000. I forgave it weeks ago. But the bar argument? She was drunk, rehashing old bets. His left hand? Wait, he was right-handed. Ruled out? But syndicates. That Blue Note joint? Never heard. My businesses are legit. Liar? I pressed, mentioning Lang. Lang? Hired him for collections, debts from war contracts. He argued with Vivian. News to me. Shadows deepening. Back at the brownstone by noon, rain easing to a mist. Wolfe was in the office, nursing a beer, the foam mustache rivaling Harcourt's. Report, Archie. I laid it out. Thorne's device, overheating folly, Vivian's threats, Mabel's affair, dead end, Harcourt's denials. Wolfe grunted. Clues lurk in shadows, Archie. The glove, planted. The cologne, thorns, but perhaps borrowed. A knock. Lily Rowan, drenched but defiant, bursting in. Archie, Nero, progress? Kramer's badgering. She collapsed into a chair, accepting beer from Fritz. Vivian mentioned Lang watching her, said he was enforcing for someone. Wolfe perked. Enforcing? Syndicates. I showed the matchbook. Harlem lead tonight, but afternoon brought a witness. A gala waiter, tipped by Kramer, phoned. Saw Lang argue with Vivian. Pay up or else, he growled. And Thorne? Overheard him mutter, she'll ruin me after her mockery. Patterns, debts, exposures, jealousies. Wolfe dispatched me again to the Blue Note under cover. Dusk fell, city lights flickering on. The club was a smoky den, jazz sax wailing, patrons in zoot suits and fedoras. I nursed a whiskey, flashing the matchbook to the barman, a burly Negro with a gold tooth. Lang? Yeah, regular collector for the syndicate. Vivian owed big, 20 large to the boss via Harcourt's loans. Harcourt's shady side confirmed. And Thorne? Heard he peddled gadgets to the mob, eavesdropping on rivals. Tie-in, a shadow loomed. Lang himself, fedora low, slipping in. I tailed him to a back room, overhearing. The dame's dead. Job done? No, wasn't me. Confront? Risky. I bolted, phoning Wolfe from a pay booth. Boss, Lang's alive. Denying. Wolfe. Return, we assemble threads. Night deepened. Clues shadowing truth. Chapter 6. The interrogation intensifies. The midnight call that shattered the calm of our West 35th Street brownstone came like a thunderclap in a summer storm, jolting me from a half-doze in my armchair. I'd just finished relaying the speakeasy scuttlebutt to Wolfe, Lang's denial, Harcourt's mob ties, Thorne's gadget peddling, when the phone erupted. Wolfe, midway through his second beer, gestured for me to answer, his eyes narrowing like a cat spotting a mouse. Nero Wolfe's residence, Archie Goodwin, I barked, expecting Kramer with another gripe. Instead, a breathless voice. Goodwin, it's Clara Voss, Dr. Thorne's assistant. You must come. Quick, the lab. Someone's broken in. Papers everywhere, the prototype smashed. And a note. You're next. I glanced at Wolfe, who nodded imperceptibly. On my way, Miss Voss. Lock the doors. Don't touch anything. Hanging up, I grabbed my coat. Boss, Thorne's lab hit. Burglary or warning? Wolfe set down his glass with a thud. Intensification, Archie. The killer stirs the pot. Go. Report back, and caution, shadows conceal daggers. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under sodium lamps like a film noir set. I hailed a cab to Greenwich Village, the driver a chatty type who prattled about the Yankees' slump. Thorne's brownstone loomed dark, save for a flickering light in the basement window. Clara met me at the door, her mousy face ashen, notepad discarded in favor of wringing hands. Mr. Goodwin, thank God. The doctor, he's hysterical. She led me down, the air thick with ozone and shattered glass. The lab was a wreck, workbenches overturned, wires snarled like vines, the listening device prototype in pieces on the floor. Thorne knelt amid the debris, spectacles crooked, muttering curses. What happened, Doc? I asked, scanning for clues. A window jimmied open, entry point, papers strewn, blueprints investor lists, including Vivian's name, crossed out angrily. Thorne looked up, eyes wild. After your visit, I locked up, heard a crash around 11. Came down to this. The note. He handed me a scrap. Block letters. You're next. Keep silent. Glove prints? Smudges on the safe? Attempted crack? Clara hovered. I live upstairs, heard nothing till the doctor shouted. Her alibi for the gala? With Thorne, but now cracks showed. Miss Voss, I probed. You mentioned Vivian's threats. Jealous, perhaps? She mocked the invention. You defend it fiercely. She flushed. Jealous? No. Dedicated. Doctor's brilliant. Vivian was a leech. Motive there? Assistant scorned? I phoned Kramer from Thorne's line. Inspector, break in at Thorne's. Tied to Slade murder? He grumbled, but promised a squad. While waiting, I grilled Thorne. Your gadget? For the mob? Blue Note barman said so. Thorne deflated. Not directly. Harcourt introduced contacts, syndicate types needing surveillance tech. Lang handled deliveries. Vivian found out, threatened exposure. Folly indeed if it leaked. Lang again. Interrogation intensifying, ties tightening. Kramer's boys arrived, Pearly Stebbins in tow, fingerprint kit clanking. Goodwin, you beat us here. Wolfe's nose in it again. They dusted, bagged the note. I slipped out, mind racing. Back home by 2 a.m., Wolfe awaited in the office, Fritz's nightcap sandwich untouched. Report, he commanded. I detailed wreckage, note, mob links. Phooey, Wolfe growled. Escalation. The killer silences threats. Summon suspects tomorrow. Interrogation here. Dawn brought Lily Rowan, arriving unannounced as I finished breakfast. She swept in like a whirlwind, coat dripping anew from fresh showers, eyes stormy. Archie, darling, that break-in. Papers say it's linked, and Vivian's debts. I found her ledger in my penthouse safe. She owed everyone. Harcourt 10 grand, Thorne 5, even me 1,000. From old bets. She handed over the ledger, leather-bound, entries in Vivian's looping script. Debts tallied 25 large, syndicates noted. She confided in me last week, feared enforcers. Lang? Wolfe, descending from orchids, examined it. Miss Rowan, commendable. This illuminates motives. Archie, tail Lang, find his lair. Lily lingered, her hand on my arm. Be careful, Escamillo, this feels personal. Her concern warmed me, our banter hid depths. I hit the streets, starting at the Blue Note. Daytime the club was shuttered, but a janitor sweeping the stoop took a fin. Lang bunks at a flophouse on Lenox, room 3B. Harlem's Lenox Avenue, a bustling artery of brownstones and jazz joints. The flophouse was a dingy pile, lobby smelling of cabbage and despair. The clerk, after another bribe, confirmed. Lang, in and out, shady type. I climbed creaky stairs, picked the lock on 3B, empty, but clues abounded. Discarded fedora, papers linking to Harcourt's oil firm, a blueprint snippet matching Thorne's device, and a glove, leather, left-handed, twin to Thorne's, planted, or Lang's. A noise, footsteps. I hid behind the door as Lang entered, gaunt face drawn. He froze, spotting the disturbance. Easy, Victor, I said, stepping out, hand near my shoulder holster. Archie Goodwin, for Wolfe. Talk or Kramer's next. Lang's eyes darted, but he sagged onto the bed. Not me. Didn't kill her. Harcourt hired me to collect from Vivian. Debts via his racket arm. Argued at the gala, sure, but left before the scream. Someone framed me. Rifled Lily's study for the dagger. No, I was searching for Vivian's IOU. Harcourt wanted it back. Alibi. Bartender at a dive on 125th. Ask him. Shaky, but possible. And Thorne? You delivered his gadgets to the mob. Lang nodded. Thorne's in deep. Sold prototypes for cash. Vivian knew. Blackmailed him. That's your killer. Interrogation yielding fruit. I left Lang with a warning. Stay put. And phoned Kramer. Lang surfaced. Cooperative. Check his alibi. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe assembled pieces over lunch. Fritz's veal chops and mushroom sauce, sublime. Archie, the glove, Thorne's alibi cracks. Summon him. Thorne arrived post-lunch, Clara in tow, both fidgety. Wolfe ensconced, beer in hand. Doctor, your device, sold to syndicates. Vivian's exposure threatened ruin. Thorne stammered, desperate, funds low. But murder? No, Clara defended. He was with the senator. But Fisk, phoned earlier, clarified. Thorne excused himself longer than admitted. 10 minutes, enough for the deed. Crack, and the glove. Found one at Lang's. Yours? Thorne paled. Lost it, or stolen. Red herring? Wolfe pressed. Your left-handed grip. Matches wound. Cologne on dagger. Yours. Thorne crumbled. All right, I argued with Vivian on the terrace. Grabbed the dagger in rage, but didn't strike. She laughed, walked away. Someone else? Partial confession, interrogation intensifying, lies peeling like onion layers. Lily returned, distraught yet defiant. Archie, that ledger. Vivian noted Thorne's betrayal, and Harcourt called, nervous, wants to meet. We orchestrated. Harcourt arrived, blustering. Wolfe, this inquisition, my alibis hold. But the ledger, forgave her debt, why kill? Wolfe, your enforcer Lang, convenient distraction. Harcourt sweated. Business, yes, but clean. Shadows deepened as evening fell, city lights winking on. A tip from Pearlie. Glove fibers match Thorne's, but prints? Lang's. Frame job? Interrogation revealed web. Debts, inventions, betrayals. Wolfe muttered. Archie, convene all tomorrow, but intensity built. Justice, closing in. Chapter 7. Red herrings abound. The night had cloaked the city in a shroud of mist and mystery, but by morning the rain had tapered to a drizzle that mirrored the murky tangle of our case. I, Archie Goodwin, rose early in the West 35th Street brownstone, the aroma of Fritz's coffee pulling me downstairs like a siren's call. Wolfe was still ensconced in his plant rooms, communing with his orchids, so I used the quiet hours to sift through the avalanche of clues and confessions from the previous day's interrogations. Thorne's partial admission rang in my ears. He'd argued with Vivian, gripped the dagger in rage, but sworn he hadn't struck. Lang holed up in his flophouse, denying the deed while fingering Thorne, Harcourt blustering about forgiven debts, and Clara Voss, that loyal shadow, defending her doctor with a fervor that bordered on fanaticism. Red herrings were swimming everywhere, thick as smelt in the East River. The phone jangled as I poured my second cup. Inspector Kramer, his voice a gravelly bark over the line. Goodwin, you and Wolfe better have something solid. We found a threatening letter in Harcourt's tux pocket from the gala. Pay up or face the consequences. V. Circumstantial, but enough for an arrest. He's cooling his heels downtown. Case closed or close enough. I chuckled. Closed? With more loose ends than a frayed fedora? Wolfe says, "Phooey to your neat package, Inspector." Kramer growled something unprintable and hung up. I relayed it to Wolfe when he descended at 9, his yellow pajamas billowing like sails on a galleon. He settled into his chair with a seismic grunt, forking into Fritz's breakfast of shirred eggs and sausages. Arrested Harcourt? Premature. Too tidy, Archie. The killer plants distractions like weeds in a garden. He was right. The plot was thickening like one of Fritz's legendary béarnaise sauces, rich and deceptive. I'd dispatched myself to verify alibis and chase shadows, starting with a return to Lang's flophouse on Lenox Avenue. The Harlem streets buzzed with morning life, vendors hawking hot pretzels, kids dodging puddles on their way to school, the faint wail of a saxophone practicing from an open window. The clerk at the desk, a wizened old timer with a cigar stub, nodded me up. "Your pal Lang, still here, grumbling about cops." Lang opened the door warily, his gaunt face etched with fatigue, the room reeking of stale smoke and cheap bourbon. "Goodwin? Back for more? I told you I didn't kill her?" He slumped on the bed, fedora discarded on a rickety chair. I grilled him harder this time. "The glove at your place, Thorne's, and that blueprint snippet stolen from his lab?" Lang's eyes shifted like a ferret's. "Blueprint? Harcourt sent me to retrieve it," said Thorne double-crossed him, sold the gadget design to rivals in the syndicate. I rifled Lily's study at the gala thinking Vivian stashed it there. She was blackmailing Thorne with it, you know. But the glove? Planted, I swear. Someone's framing me to muddy the waters. A red herring, perhaps, but his story had a ring of truth. I left him with a warning to stay visible and headed to police headquarters, where Kramer had Harcourt in a holding cell. The inspector met me in the bullpen, cigar puffing like a locomotive. "What now, Goodwin? Come to gloat? Just checking your case closed." "That letter, forgery," Kramer snorted. "Lab's analyzing the ink, but it matches Vivian's handwriting." I persuaded him to let me see Harcourt, who paced his cell like a caged bear, mustache drooping. "Goodwin, this is a outrage. That letter, planted in my pocket during the mingle. I never threatened her." His alibi held. Bartender Gino confirmed his position, but the jealousy angle with his wife Eleanor and Vivian's rumored affair lingered like smoke. Eleanor, when I phoned her from a pay booth, sounded brittle. Reginald? Innocent, of course. Vivian was a flirt, but old news. Yet her tone hinted at resentment. Another herring? Back at the brownstone by noon, Lily Rowan arrived unbidden, a vision in a tailored coat and hat, her emerald eyes flashing with determination. She breezed into the office, planting a kiss on my cheek that carried the scent of jasmine and resolve. "Archie, darling, I've been digging. Found Vivian's diary in her effects. Police overlooked it at my penthouse." She produced a slim volume, leather-bound and scented with faded perfume. Wolfe examined it over his beer, pages rustling. Entries slandered Thorne. "Elias's gadget a scam, overheats worthless. I'll expose him and ruin his precious invention." Dated the week before the gala. but Wolfe's nose twitched. Archie, the ink, too fresh, glossy under light, forgery. Indeed, a quick test with a magnifying glass revealed inconsistencies. The paper aged artificially, perhaps with tea stains. Someone had planted this red herring to point fingers at Thorne. Who had access? I mused. Lily shrugged. Anyone at the gala. Diary was in my guest room where Vivian freshened up. Character depths were revealing themselves like layers in an onion. Wolfe's reluctance to dive deeper masked a protective fondness for Lily. He'd known her family in his Montenegro days, a detail he rarely shared. My banter with her, sharp as ever, hid genuine concern. She'd been too close to the blade that night. The afternoon brought another twist. Senator Fisk, that sleek politician, called at Kramer's behest. He arrived in a chauffeured sedan, overcoat impeccable, but his eyes betrayed unease. Wolfe, Goodwin, heard about the arrest, but Thorne's alibi, I may have misremembered. He was gone longer, 15 minutes perhaps, enough time to slip to the terrace. Red herring or truth? Fisk admitted pressure. Vivian knew about my war bond schemes, shady investments. She hinted at exposure, another suspect, but his right-handed signature on the visitor log ruled him out for the wound angle. Wolfe dispatched me to Thorne's lab again, where chaos from the break-in lingered, police tape fluttering, Clara sweeping debris. Thorne was absent, but Clara confessed nervously. Doctor's at a meeting with syndicate contacts. He's desperate for funds since Vivian pulled her investment. I pressed. The forged diary? Your handwriting? She blanched. No, but I saw Lang lurking near the guest room at the gala. Deflection? Her devotion to Thorne seemed obsessive. Perhaps she'd plant evidence to protect him. En route home, I tailed a lead from the Blue Note barman. A witness swore seeing Eleanor Harcourt argue with Vivian pre-toast. Stay away from my husband. Her voice venomous. Jealous wife trope. But Eleanor's alibi with Reginald felt thin. Dusk fell as I returned, the city lights blooming like fireflies. Wolfe, after a session with his orchids, orchestrated the next move over Fritz's dinner of roast duck with cherry sauce, a masterpiece that even distracted from the case. Archie, red herrings abound, forged letter, planted glove, fake diary. The killer sows confusion to obscure the root. Lang resurfaced via phone, voice urgent. Goodwin? Someone's tailing me. Fedora, shadows, and that blueprint? It's no gadget, it's for counterfeit bonds, Thorne's real folly. Vivian discovered it, planned to expose. Counterfeit? Tied to post-war scams in the papers? Harcourt's oil empire funded it? Thorne invented the tech? Layers upon layers. Kramer barged in post-dinner, hat in hand, cigar smoldering. Wolfe, the ink on Harcourt's letter, fresh, forged. He's released, grumbling lawsuits. Back to square one. Wolfe leaned back, satisfied. Fui, neatness betrays artifice. But as Kramer left, a telegram arrived from Thorne. Meet midnight, my lab. Truth about Vivian. Chapter 8. Piecing the Puzzle. The clock had struck midnight like a judge's gavel, but instead of heading to Thorne's lab for his cryptic summons, I heeded Wolfe's caution and phoned Kramer instead. Inspector, Thorne's telegram, midnight meet at his lab. Smells like a setup. Kramer, ever the bulldog, dispatched a squad car, grumbling about overtime, but appreciating the tip. By 1 a.m., he called back, "Your hunch paid off, Goodwin. Lab's empty, but signs of a scuffle. Overturned chair, fresh footprints in the dust. Thorne's vanished. APB out now." I relayed it to Wolfe, who sat in his office, nursing a final beer, the foam clinging to his upper lip like frost on a window pane. "Pfui," he muttered. "The puzzle assembles itself, Archie. Thorne flees or is taken. Motives crystallize. The invention not mere gadgetry, but a tool for counterfeit, as Lang claimed. Sleep came fitfully that night, the brownstone's creaks echoing like whispers of unresolved clues. Dawn broke with a watery sun piercing the curtains, casting long shadows across my room. Downstairs, Fritz was already at work, the kitchen alive with the sizzle of bacon and the rich aroma of fresh brewed coffee. I tackled the Gazette over breakfast, headlines screaming, "Inventor missing in Slade murder probe." A sidebar speculated on syndicate involvement. Post-war black markets thriving on fake bonds and currencies. Thorne's folly, a device for flawless forgeries. It fit, eavesdropping tech repurposed for scanning and duplicating security features. Wolfe descended at 9, his ritual unbroken, settling into his chair with the Times and a tray of Fritz's griddle cakes smothered in butter and honey. Archie, developments? I briefed him on the papers, adding Kramer's update. No trace of Thorne, but Clara Voss hysterical at the precinct, claiming ignorance. She's covering, boss. Her devotion's thicker than your sauces. Wolfe nodded, dabbing his lips. Indeed, assemble the pieces. The dagger's angle, left-handed thrust. Thorne's dominant hand, confirmed. The cologne, vetiver, his blend, faint on the hilt. The glove, planted at Lang's to implicate the stranger. I paced the office, connecting dots. And the forged diary, fresh ink. Someone with access like Clara, faking entries to pin it on Thorne. No, wait, that would protect him? Misdirection. Wolfe's eyes half closed in concentration. Consider timelines, Archie. Gala toast at 10. Lights dim. Vivian stabbed moments later. Thorne excused himself per Fisk. 15 minutes. Enough to filch the dagger. Confront her on the terrace. But red herrings nagged. Harcourt's letter forged. Eleanor's jealousy, a sideshow. Lang's enforcement, a distraction. Syndicate angle, I mused. Vivian discovered Thorne's counterfeit scheme, funded by Harcourt's rackets. She blackmails Thorne. Expose it. He panics. Kills her. Wolfe grunted approval. Plausible. But evidence? The blueprint at Lang's. Counterfeit template. Retrieve it. I phoned Pearlie Stebbins, who confirmed. Yeah, we bagged it from Lang's room. Intricate diagrams for bond replication. Tech boys say it's genius level. Piece by piece, the puzzle took shape. Lily arrived mid-morning, her presence a welcome gust in the stuffy office. She perched on my desk, legs crossed elegantly, her hat tilted at a jaunty angle. Archie, Nero, Thorne's gone. Papers are ablaze. And I remembered, Vivian whispered about Elias's lab secrets days before. I thought it gossip. Wolfe questioned her gently, his fondness evident in the softened rumble of his voice. Miss Rowan, the ledger, entries on Thorne's debt. Forged? Lily frowned. Possibly. Vivian's script, but inconsistent flourishes. Another fake muddying motives. I hit the streets again, first to Clara Voss's apartment above the lab. A modest walk-up in the village, walls papered with scientific clippings. She answered the door, eyes red-rimmed, notepad clutched like a lifeline. Mr. Goodwin? The doctor's missing. I swear I don't know where. I pressed inside, the room tidy but tense. Clara, your alibi? With Thorne, but Fisk says he wandered. And the diary forgery? Your hand? She crumbled, sinking into a chair. I planted the diary entries after the murder. To make it seem Vivian hated Thorne for the gadget, not the counterfeits. Protecting him. He didn't kill her. I did. No, wait, I didn't. He confessed to me. He argued, but someone else struck. Partial truth? Her tears seemed genuine, but devotion blinded. The note at the break-in, your writing? She shook her head vehemently. Peace. Accomplice or innocent? Next, Harcourt's mansion on the Upper East Side, a marble pile overlooking Central Park. Servants gliding like ghosts. Eleanor greeted me, emeralds absent, her face drawn. Mr. Goodwin, Reginald's at the office, furious about the arrest, but Vivian, she deserved better. Probing. Your argument with her, jealousy? Eleanor sighed. Old wounds. She dallied with Reginald, yes, but I confronted her. Words, not blades. My alibi? With him at the bar. But a maid, overheard whispering, added, Mrs. Harcourt slipped away briefly. Powder room, she said. Crack in the facade. Back by lunch, Fritz's spread of cold cuts and potato salad fueled our session. Wolfe, replete, leaned back. Archie, the cologne. Thorne's, but Lang mentioned a similar scent on Harcourt's enforcers. Borrowed bottle, I recalled. Vetiver common in cheap aftershaves. Not unique. And the left-handed clue. Thorne, but Harcourt writes right. Signs left? Wait, no. Wolfe dispatched. Visit the Blue Note again. Syndicate boss. The club, daytime dim, barman polishing glasses. A 20 loosened his tongue. Thorne delivered prototypes here, counterfeit machines disguised as listeners. Vivian snooped, threatened the operation. Lang collected, but Thorne handled the tech. Peace. Thorne central. But who struck? Afternoon waned, shadows lengthening across the office. Kramer barged in, hat crushed in fist. Wolfe. Thorne surfaced, hiding in a Jersey motel, claims fear for life, says Lang threatened him post-murder. Wolfe's lips twitched. Bring him here, Inspector. And the others, gathering time. The office transformed into a courtroom, chairs arranged, Fritz providing refreshments. Suspects arrived, Lang, gaunt and wary. Harcourt, blustering, Eleanor composed, Clara, tearful, Lily, supportive at my side, Fisk, slick, and Thorne, escorted by Pearlie, disheveled but defiant. Wolfe presided, beer in hand. Ladies, gentlemen, the puzzle nears completion. Vivian Slade died not for debts or scandals, but knowledge threatening a counterfeit ring. Gasps rippled. Thorne protested, lies, but Wolfe produced the blueprint, courtesy of Kramer. Your listener, repurposed for forging bonds. Vivian invested, discovered the scam, demanded out, threatened exposure. Harcourt sweated, my funding? Legit loans. Lang interjected, boss, you ordered me to silence her, but I didn't. Tensions mounted, accusations flying. Clara sobbed. Doctor wouldn't. Eleanor glared at her husband. Wolfe silenced them. The dagger, left-handed. Thorne demonstrate. Thorne signed a paper, left-handed. The cologne yours, the glove yours, planted to frame Lang. Thorne trembled. I confronted her, yes. Grabbed the dagger from the case. Rage, but I dropped it. Someone else picked it up. Puzzle shifting. Accomplice. Clara, her eyes widened. Fibers from the glove. Wolfe had analyzed via a contact. Match Vivian's gown, torn in struggle. Lily whispered, Archie, the faint cologne on the dagger. Thorne's, but Clara wears similar perfume. Peace. Clara, left-handed too. I recalled her notepad grip. Wolfe built. The break-in staged by Thorne to flee. But the note, Clara's block letters, broke. I helped, but didn't kill. Denouement approached, puzzle pieces locking. Chapter 9, The Climactic Revelation. The office in our West 35th Street brownstone had never felt more like a stage set for a grand opera, or perhaps a courtroom drama where the judge, jury, and executioner were all rolled into one immovable seventh of a ton named Nero Wolfe. It was the following evening, the city outside shrouded in a fog that rolled off the Hudson like a veil over secrets long buried. Fritz had outdone himself, arranging chairs in a semicircle facing Wolfe's massive desk with trays of beer, coffee, and light refreshments to ease the tension, though nothing could truly soothe the electric atmosphere crackling among the gathered suspects. Wolfe sat enthroned in his custom chair, a fresh bottle of beer at hand, his expression a mask of serene certainty that belied the intellectual storm brewing behind those half-lidded eyes. I, Archie Goodwin, stood by the door like a sentinel, notebook in pocket but ready to jot if needed, my gaze sweeping the room. Inspector Kramer occupied a red leather chair to Wolfe's right, his cigar unlit out of deference to the boss's aversion to smoke, his red face set in a scowl that said he resented being here but couldn't resist the pull of resolution. Beside him slouched Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins, arms crossed, eyes like gimlets boring into each arrival. Lily Rowan arrived first, her crimson coat a splash of color in the muted oak-paneled room, her poise unbroken despite the ordeal. She squeezed my hand as she passed, whispering, Archie, darling, let's hope this ends the nightmare. She took a seat near me, her emerald eyes fixed on Wolfe with a mix of admiration and anxiety. Reginald Harcourt lumbered in next, his mustache bristling with indignation, Eleanor on his arm looking fragile as porcelain. Wolfe, this better be worth dragging us here, he boomed, settling into a chair that creaked under his weight. Eleanor murmured assent, her emeralds catching the lamplight like accusatory sparks. Victor Lang slinked in under escort, his gaunt frame hunched in a borrowed overcoat, fedora clutched in calloused hands. He darted glances around, settling in a corner chair as if ready to bolt. His foreign accent thick as he muttered, this charade, I am innocent. Senator Fisk arrived with political slickness, nodding greetings like a campaigner, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. Gentlemen, Miss Rowan, let's get to the truth. Finally, Dr. Elias Thorne and Clara Voss, brought in by Kramer's men from protective custody, Thorne looked haggard, his wild hair tamed somewhat, spectacles polished but askew. Clara clung to his arm, her mousy demeanor cracked by red-rimmed eyes, notepad abandoned for a handkerchief. Wolfe surveyed them all, letting the silence build like pressure in a kettle. Fritz dimmed the light slightly at a signal, casting the room in a golden glow from the desk lamp, shadows playing on faces like masks in a Greek tragedy. "Thank you for coming," Wolfe intoned, his voice a deep rumble that commanded attention. "This gathering is not social, but necessary. Vivian Slade's murder at Miss Rowans Gala demands resolution. The facts assembled point to the culprit." Kramer leaned forward. "Get on with it, Wolfe. We've chased enough ghosts." Wolfe ignored him, popping the cap on his beer with a faint hiss. "Let us review. Miss Slade was stabbed with an antique dagger from Miss Rowan's collection. Downward thrust, left-handed during the dim toast. Clues, a scrap in her clutch. Thorne's folly, expose it. A glove near the body, fibers matching her gown. Faint vetiver cologne on the hilt. A rifled study. Arguments overheard. Debts, scandals, threats." Thorne shifted uncomfortably, Clara patting his hand. Lang's eyes narrowed. "Motives abound," Wolfe continued. "Miss Slade's gambling debts, owed to Mr. Harcourt's syndicate arm, collected by Mr. Lang. Her investment in Dr. Thorne's listener, a revolutionary device, but his true folly, repurposed for counterfeiting war bonds, a post-war scam funded covertly by Harcourt's oil rackets." Harcourt blustered. "Lies, my businesses are legitimate." Eleanor gasped, hand to her throat. Wolfe raised a finger. "Pfui! The blueprint retrieved from Mr. Lang's room. Counterfeit templates disguised as eavesdropping tech. Miss Slade discovered this, demanded her money back, threatened exposure. Blackmail, pure and venomous," Fisk interjected smoothly. "If true, Thorne had motive, but so did others. Vivian knew my indiscretions with bonds." "A red herring," Wolfe dismissed. "Your right-handedness rules you out, as does Mr. Harcourt's, observed signing documents. Mr. Lang, ambidextrous, but his alibi at a nearby dive holds. Per witnesses." Lang exhaled audibly, slumping in relief. Wolfe's gaze settled on Thorne. "Doctor, your left hand dominates, matching the wound. Your cologne, vetiver blend from your lab. The glove, yours, lost or planted. You confess to arguing with Miss Slade on the terrace, gripping the dagger in rage, then dropping it." Thorne paled, voice quavering. "Yes, I confronted her. She laughed at my folly, said she'd ruin me. I grabbed the dagger from the case earlier, impulsive, but I couldn't. I dropped it and fled back inside. Someone else must have." Clara sobbed quietly. "Doctor, no." Wolfe nodded. "Indeed. The timeline. You excused yourself for 15 minutes, enough to rifle the study for the blueprint Miss Slade had stolen as leverage, then confront her. But the stab occurred post-toast. Witnesses place you returning just before." Murmurs rippled. Lily leaned forward. "Then who?" Wolfe's eyes gleamed. "Consider the forgeries. Not just bonds, but clues. The diary entries slandering Thorne, ink too fresh. The threatening letter in Harcourt's pocket, planted. The break-in at the lab, staged. But the note in block letters matching samples from Miss Voss's notepad." Clara froze, handkerchief mid-dab. "Me? No. Miss Voss," Wolfe intoned. "Your devotion to Dr. Thorne is commendable, but obsessive. Left-handed, as observed in your notes. Your alibi? With Thorne, but fluid during his absence. You overheard his argument, saw the dropped dagger, seized the moment in the dim light, struck to protect your idol, your love." Clara's face crumpled, tears streaming. "No, yes, Vivian was destroying him, his genius. She mocked us, threatened to expose the counterfeits we'd built together. I followed, picked up the dagger. It was impulse. For him." Thorne recoiled. "Clara, you—" She nodded, broken. "I planted the glove at Lang's, forged the diary to misdirect, make it seem about the gadget, not the bonds. The cologne. I used his blend to mask my own scent." Kramer surged to his feet. "Confession! Stebbins, cuff her!" Clara stood, defiant through sobs. "I'd do it again, for Elias's work." Wolfe sighed as Pearlie led her away, Thorne trailing in shock. "Justice, Inspector. Though folly breeds tragedy." Harcourt mopped his brow. "My rackets exposed?" Kramer grinned wolfishly. We'll discuss that downtown. Fisk slipped out quietly, Lang vanishing into shadows. Lily hugged me tightly. Archie, you and Nero, brilliant. Wolfe set down his empty glass. Satisfactory. Archie, note the fees. Chapter 10. Resolution and Reflections. The aftermath of Clara Voss's confession hung in the brownstone's office like the lingering smoke from one of Inspector Kramer's cigars, thick, acrid, but ultimately clearing to reveal the stark truth beneath. It was the day after our dramatic gathering, the fog outside having lifted to a crisp autumn afternoon in 1945 New York, where the leaves on West 35th Street swirled in eddies like scattered clues finally swept away. I, Archie Goodwin, stood by the window, watching the city pulse with its usual indifference to individual tragedies, while inside, the pieces of our puzzle settled into a complete, if somber, picture. Clara had been led away in handcuffs by Pearlie Stebbins, her sobs echoing down the hall as she cast a final, pleading glance at Dr. Elias Thorne. The inventor himself had collapsed into a chair, his wild hair disheveled beyond repair, his spectacles fogged with what might have been tears or sheer disbelief. Clara, for me, he murmured repeatedly, as if the words could undo the deed. Wolfe, ever the stoic, had merely nodded to Kramer, signaling the end of his orchestration. Justice, Inspector, though it tastes bitter, like overbrewed tea. Kramer, for once, didn't argue. He clamped a fresh cigar between his teeth, unlit, of course, and grumbled admiration. Wolfe, you fat genius, you pulled it off again. Voss's full confession at the precinct. She admitted staging the break-in to give Thorne an excuse to flee, forging the diary and letter to scatter suspicion like confetti. The glove, snatched from Thorne's coat, planted at Lang's to frame the enforcer, and the cologne, hers, a similar blend she used to mimic his, masking her presence at the scene. I chimed in from my perch. Motive sealed it. Obsessive love, twisted into murder. Clara saw Thorne drop the dagger, picked it up in the dim light, struck Vivian from behind to save his reputation, all while he was stumbling back inside, oblivious. Thorne rose shakily, his voice a whisper. I never knew. Her devotion. But the counterfeits, my folly, yes. Desperation drove me to repurpose the listener for bond forgeries. Harcourt funded it under the table. Syndicates distributed. Vivian uncovered it, demanded her share or exposure. I panicked, confronted her, but Clara, she acted alone. Harcourt, red-faced and blustering, stood with Eleanor clinging to his arm. Wolfe, this exposes my indiscretions, but I swear, no hand in the killing. Kramer eyed him wolfishly. We'll chat downtown about those indiscretions, Reggie. Rackets and forgeries, that's federal territory. Victor Lang, the sinister stranger no longer quite so enigmatic, slipped out with a nod to me, his role reduced to a pawn in the larger game, his debts and enforcements mere distractions. Senator Fisk vanished even quicker, his political sheen tarnished but not broken. He'd weasel out of any peripheral scandals with greased palms and favors. Lily Rowan lingered longest, her hand warm in mine as the others filed out under police escort. Archie, you and Nero saved more than my gala's reputation. You unraveled a web that could have ensnared us all. Her eyes, those polished emeralds, held a depth of gratitude that made my pulse quicken. Wolfe, from his chair, offered a rare smile, fractional but genuine. Miss Rowan, your hospitality precipitated the events, but your courage resolved them. Dinner, perhaps, as recompense? She laughed, that champagne bubble sound cutting the tension. Nero, you old bear, Fritz's cooking would be divine. But first, a toast to forgotten foes and found justice. As the door closed behind her, the brownstone settled into its familiar rhythm. Fritz clearing trays with efficient grace, Theodore upstairs tending orchids, and Wolfe reaching for a book, Caesar's Commentaries, fitting for a conqueror of puzzles. I typed up the report at my desk, fingers flying over the Remington keys, the clack-clack a soothing coda to the chaos. Justice served swiftly in the days that followed. Clara Voss faced arraignment, her confession ironclad, though her lawyer pleaded temporary insanity, obsession as a defense. The papers splashed it across headlines. Assistant's fatal devotion, murder at millionaire's gala. Thorne cooperated with authorities, his counterfeit scheme dismantled, facing charges but likely leniency for testimony against Harcourt's rackets. Reginald found himself in hot water, his oil empire audited, Eleanor standing by with steely resolve, scandals weathered like storms. Lang faded into the city's underbelly, perhaps wiser for the brush with the law. Fisk's name stayed out of the fray, politics' oily machinery protecting its own. And Lily, our paths crossed often, dinners at the brownstone, strolls along the Hudson, her wit a counterpoint to Wolfe's grumbles. Reflecting now, as I file the case away in our cabinets, it strikes me how mysteries mirror life. Shadows lurk and glitter, motives fester beneath veneers, and resolution brings not just answers, but a touch of melancholy. Wolfe, nursing a beer in his chair, summed it up best. Archie, humanity's follies are infinite, like orchids' varieties. We prune one, another blooms. Fui to them all. But satisfaction lingers, the intellectual triumph, the bonds strengthened. Lily's gala, once a scene of horror, became legend in New York's high society. Whispers of the sinister stranger, the jeweled dagger, the genius detective who never left his lair, yet unraveled it all. Dear listener, as the echoes of this tale fade like jazz notes in the night, what are your reflections? Did the twist with Clara surprise you, or did you spot the clues in her shadows? Drop your speculations in the comments. Perhaps share a red herring that fooled you. If this mystery captivated, subscribe for more evenings of intrigue with Nero Wolfe. And remember, in the puzzle of life, keep your wits sharp, your alibis solid, and your orchids blooming.